All right, hey, welcome back. We're going to talk about chapter 7 in the Hellenistic age. Talk about Alexander the Great and the period that's going to follow, kind of the demise of the Greek republics. And so the idea of Hellenism or the Hellenistic age, this period that's going to be this interlude between the Greek empires and the Roman empires, is going to be the Hellenistic age. And this word for Hellenistic comes from the idea of Greek. And so the Greek word for themselves was Hellas. And so the Hellenistic age is just simply the Greek age. And so what this really is this empire that is is spread by Alexander the Great when his father takes over all of Greece, and then Alexander extends that empire throughout the Persian Empire. They conquer the Persians and put in place Greek generals and Greek military leaders in key political positions that last for centuries. And so the ideas and the culture of Greek begins to spread throughout the world, right? And then eventually Alexander's empire, after he dies, falls into disarray and is ultimately replaced by the Romans. But when we look at Alexander the Great's empire, of course, the myth is that he conquers the known world. Well, really what he conquers is the Persian Empire. He conquers Greece, modern day Turkey, into Iran, into modern day Afghanistan, and onto the borders of India, as well as the Egyptians. And so he's going to conquer the areas that we have been talking about. So yeah, he is going to conquer the world. But to get to that, we have to talk about where they're going to come from. And so Alexander's father was Philip II. He's going to come from a place called Macedon, which is a kingdom. It was north of Greece. It was part of Greece, but it really kind of wasn't part of Greece. It was more just kind of like, it was Greece's distant cousin that, would show up for the family reunion and probably drink too much and embarrass everybody. And so we didn't really necessarily talk about them. But what the Macedonians really kind of brought to the table was that they were a buffer between the Greek city-states and the raiding herds or hordes of tribes that lived north of Greece, that would ride in and they would fight the Macedonians, and the Macedonians would typically expel them. And so what that does is that protects mainland Greece from invasion from outside forces, which allows Greece itself to develop over time. And so you have the development of Athens and Sparta and all this. And some of that is because of the Macedonians taking the brunt of the military action or the raiding parties from outside. And so when you're constantly raided, you're going to develop a very strong militaristic impulse or tendencies. And so we look at like the Assyrians kind of faced a similar thing. The Persians faced a similar outlook when they began their empire. And so they're fighting for survival, and then eventually they get to the point where they're able to push their empire out, right? By 500 BCE, after the Peloponnesian Wars, Macedon has grown, and they've taken on cities, and they're starting to participate in the into the Olympics. But they're gonna steer clear of the infighting that's going to cause the toppling of Greek society. They stay away from Greek fighting, right? And so somewhere around 359 BCE, the Macedonian king Philip II, who's Alexander the Great's father, unifies the Macedonians all under his rulership, all under his leadership. And so before Philip II, the Macedonian nobles would typically kind of like backstab and fight each other for power, but he's able to get everybody kind of working in the same direction, and he's able to get everybody on the same team. He builds this large army, He gets rid of rival nobles and hostile tribes, and he pays his soldiers with a share of the loot that they conquer. And so Philip actually was injured in fighting early on in his life and lost his right eye. So here's a picture of him, and there's a statue. It's kind of fun, right? And so Philip is given credit for reorganizing the phalanx into uh, a different type of military formation. You still have the same box formation, but you give your hoplites longer spears. And so with those spears, you're not necessarily trying to stab and kill your opponent. What you're trying to do is you're trying to hold your opponent at a certain length, and then he would use cavalry on horseback to ride in and just slaughter their opponents. And so this was a revolutionary military tactic that hadn't been used before. When it comes onto the battlefield, nobody's quite ready for it. And Philip turns his attention towards Greece a little bit because Greece has so much money, and so they take the gold mines from northern Greece, and they use this army to pay his army and to bring in additional mercenaries to strengthen his armies. And these traditional Greeks are looking at the Macedonians as they grow in power, and they're like, hey, we might have a problem on our hands. And so Athens tries to form some kind of a league to resist the Macedonians, and then the Macedonians just unleash their full military might on mainland Greece, and they crush the armies of Greece. And somewhere in these battles, Philip's son Alexander, who's 18 years old, he takes charge of a cavalry unit and comes in and he wins the day. Like, the turning point of the battle, he rides in and he's heroic, and he's in the middle of everything, and takes over. And so he kind of starts to build this reputation for himself as this military leader, or this leader that's kind of on the rise. And there's a couple statue of Alexander and a portrait of him, right? And the Macedonians conquer all of Greece. And so, after 338, the Greece is no longer a collection of independent cities. It's the Macedonian kingdom that's under the rule of Philip II. And Philip's men, they start to demand more money. Hey, this is kind of fun, going and conquering people and taking their stuff, right? And so, like, hey, we're going to start to look towards the next empire. Of course, the next empire over is going to be Persia, and Persia is very wealthy. They have lots of stuff. And so, hey, we're going to go do that. But while we're planning this invasion, it's going to take a long time to do that. Philip is murdered by his bodyguards, and so Alexander, who's 20 years old at this time, takes over. And so Alexander is going to he's going to possess the right traits, and he's going to have the right traits and the right preparedness for the proper opportunity. And so he has this military genius, and he's very charismatic, and he'll lead his troops into battle. And he's very smart. He was taught by Aristotle after Philip took over Greece, and so he's very educated, and kind of sees himself like Achilles, like this Greek god of war, right? And so he takes over, and there's some but there's some of the rivals that try to pop up after the death of Philip, and Alexander takes his troops and deals with them, puts them down, and then Thebes tries to revolt, right? Thebes was I'm gonna say they were a major military power in Greece, and Alexander comes in and just crushes them, like destroys the whole city, kills thousands and thousands of people, and he takes over. And so then he's going to take this invasion plans that his father had laid out for Persia. He has 45,000 troops, and he's going to go over there, and he's going to start winning battle after battle after battle. And he's going to lead these troops into conflict himself. And one of the advantages that Alexander is going to have over the Persians is that while the Persians are able to bring together huge military force and huge military numbers, it takes a long time for them to gather that strength. And Alexander is moving with a relatively small army, and so he's able to move very quickly and conquer areas and he's able to attack the Persians where they're not expecting it, or attack them before the Persians can prepare for that. And so he's going to run over the Persian military forces for cities for a long period of time, and just conquer and conquer and conquer places. And the Persians are like, holy crap, this is not going well, right? And Alexander is smart, just like any other type of military leader, where if cities will surrender to him beforehand, then he'll allow them to stay in place, and he'll start to absorb them into his coalition. And if they're not, then he puts everybody, he puts people to the sword. And Darius III is the emperor of the Persian Empire at this point, and he realizes, hey, I'm going to have to deal with Alexander. I don't know how to do this, and so he offers Alexander this peace deal where he's willing to give him half of the Persian Empire if Alexander will just stop. And Alexander turns down his offer, but instead of attacking Darius right then and there, he turns his troops towards Egypt, and he goes into Egypt, and he liberates Egypt from the rule of the Persians, and he's kind of seen as this liberator. And Alexander goes and he visits the temples that he needs to, and he makes the proper PR, public relations appearances, and does all this, and he's kind of seen as this wonderful thing, right? And then he moves. He moves his army back to Persia, and he conquers Persepolis, which is the capital of Persia, and he burns it to the ground, right? Basically just sending this message that, hey, I'm going to erase the Persian Empire. And so Darius is going to take off, and he's going to run away, and he's going to try to get away, and he's killed by Persian nobles. And Alexander is so enraged by this, because Darius was going to be his prize, that he hunts down the nobles that killed Darius and has them killed. And so Alexander conquers all of Persia, and he pauses for a brief moment of time, to kind of calculate and regroup and distribute wealth. And while he's doing this, he looks around and he realizes, hey, some of these towns are going to need leadership, and so he picks specific generals or noblemen to settle there, Greek members of his military force, and marries them into noble families, and puts them in this influential situation, which is going to start to spread Greek influence. And really, what's important about Alexander the Great is not that he conquers all this area, but the fact that he's able to implant, I guess, Greek citizens and put them in important positions to spread Greek influence, right? So Alexander's going to make Babylon his new capital. He's going to have the Persian bureaucracy start to spread tales about Greece and Greek culture and all of those things. And he begins to push further and further. He conquers Afghanistan. He starts to threaten India, and his soldiers are like, hey, guy, we've been fighting for a decade. I started when I was 25, I'm 35. I haven't seen my kids in 10 years. I don't know if they're going to recognize me. I want to go home. And so Alexander realizes that, hey, this is probably, as far as we're going to go. And so he turns his troops back home, and they begin to fight their way. And so Alexander, he makes some bad decisions, I suppose, and they go through like Pakistan and modern day Iran, and through the deserts, and they end up losing some key battles, and Alexander gets back to Babylon, and basically he's just exhausted from his journey, and he dies of what we're going to consider overconsumption. But basically he passes away, and so he has this huge empire that he's going to spread Greek culture and Greek learning to. Right, he's going to found many Greek cities or cities throughout this region. He's going to name different cities after his horse or after his best friends, and all of these dies. He's going to divide up his empire between his generals, and of course, without Alexander to lead them, those generals are going to fight each other, and so it's going to take 40 years for them to kind of figure out the aftermath. Excuse me. The most important of, or I guess let's just start here. The weakest is going to be the Antigonoids. And they're going to be the weakest empire. They're going to go back to this area right here. They're going to control, I guess, modern day Turkey and different portions of Greece and Macedonia. It's just depleted population. They don't have the wealth that the other places do, and so over time the Greek polis are going to regain their independence. The Ptolemies are going to be the most powerful. They're going to rule over Egypt. The general Ptolemy is actually going to take Alexander's body back to Alexandria, the city that he founded in Egypt, and bury it there. And they're going to hold on, for centuries in Egypt. In fact, the last pharaoh of Egypt, who is Cleopatra, is actually going to be a descendant of Ptolemy, right? We have that. I just said that. All right. And then we have the Seleucians. The Seleucids are going to rule over Mesopotamia and Persia, and those areas are very desertous. It's hard to maintain, and eventually Julius Caesar is going to overthrow them with the Roman Empire. All right, so Hellenistic empires, as Greece starts to expand, as you get further and further away from Greece, you still have the benefits of Greek culture, but they're also going to kind of build on it. And so you're going to see the expansion of global trade. You're going to have history start to be written about Alexander, and these are going to be taught, and you're going to start to have kind of this local customs, these different ideas. They're going to share the similar language of Greek. Greece is going to the Greek language is going to grow in importance. The cities that Alexander are going to found are going to be based on like Greek-like cities. So they're going to have public forums and theaters and temples, and you're going to have public performances and the importance of the arts. You're going to have experimentations with social welfare and public education and basic service needs. They're going to come about, and people are going to see the benefits of these. Some women are going to hold bits of power. They're going to definitely surpass the freedoms that were offered to women in Greece during this time frame. And so you have that going on, right? Hellenistic philosophy begins to develop. So you have, the Greek philosophy with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. And then as the Hellenistic culture begins to spread, you start to see different schools of thought. The Epicureans are going to kind of, I would say that, I guess, if the Epicureans are going to be more similar to traditional Greek philosophy. They're trying to focus more not on necessarily like morals or whatever, but it's just focus on themselves, right? And so if the gods do exist, then they're not really overly concerned with what humans are doing, so there's no need to fear God, and there's really not going to be an afterlife, and so there's no need to be tormented by that. But we're going to focus on enjoyment of the human condition and humanism. We're going to enjoy food and drink and sex and music and theater and public performance, all in moderation, right? And they argue that emotional love will only lead to suffering, which is great. The Cynics, basically the path to happiness is the rejection of the social life and social norms. And so Cynics are going to be very cynical. They're going to make fun of a lot of people. These are going to be like your satirists. They're going to make fun of politicians and the ways that society views different things. And then you're going to have Stoics, right? And these are going to Stoics are guys that are, you don't ever get too high, don't get too low. They're just, they just accept things, and life is just rational. It doesn't have emotion, and so there's no reason to get all worked up about stuff. And you don't have luxury or indulgence, and you just, if you're rational, just kind of keep even keel, then everything will work out. And so when the Romans come around, the Romans are really going to buy into this stoicism, and kind of think, I don't know, kind of think like Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood's very stoic, in like all of his movies, even like Dirty Harry, when he's the cop and he's in the shootouts, he's always calm and cool and collected, and he's never over emotional or swayed by anything. And so you see science is going to grow. You have Hippocrates, who's going to come about, and he's going to kind of be seen as the father of modern medicine, in the Hippocratic Oath. The Library of Alexandria is going to become very important, because it's going to be just like Baghdad will become the center of Islamic knowledge. The Library of Alexandria is going to become the center of the knowledge of the ancient world, and it's going to hold every text that is available to them. Like if a ship comes in and it has scrolls or whatever, the scribes at Alexandria will take that scroll and they'll copy it, and they'll keep the original at the Library of Alexandria and give a copy back to the ship or to the traders. And so scholars from all over the world would travel to Alexandria to excuse me, would travel to Alexandria to give talks and to come and study and to spread knowledge. And there's proof that during this time frame, the Greeks actually, in Alexandria, there's a working model, or plans for a working model of a steam engine. But the Greeks don't necessarily need to be innovative with labor, because they have this huge slave population. And so it doesn't make sense for them to invest in innovation like a steam engine, which would have totally changed the world at that point, because it would have made human labor obsolete to a certain extent. You could have had the Industrial Revolution begin, in the BC era instead of in the 1800s or the 1700s in England. Ultimately, this Library of Alexandria is destroyed, and all that knowledge of the ancient world is lost. The original knowledge, at least, is lost, or at least separated or scattered throughout the world, and then eventually it will be rediscovered, or some of it will be rediscovered, and lead to the Renaissance, which we'll talk about there at the end. Okay, so that kind of gets us, that's a real brief overlook of Hellenism and the importance of Hellenism. It's just spreading Greek culture into Persia, into Egypt, around the Mediterranean. That's going to kind of lay the foundation for the Roman Empire that's going to come in and replace it here very shortly. So, all right, hopefully you guys took something out of that. Hopefully this is week 3. I hope the class is going well for you. If you need anything, just let me know, and we'll catch you in ancient Rome here in a minute.